Students, we have already learned about the types of the pollution, and you are given a chart that you have to fill up. There are some sources of pollution, there are some hazards of pollution, and preventive measures are the measures to prevent all that you have to fill up. Now, next point that we have to learn, that the need of conservation, environmental conservation. Why do we conserve this, and what is the need? First, understand that the general public is not aware of the environmental conservation. So there must be a large scale participation in this. And the basic thing that is important, that there should be the positive attitude towards the conservation. There must be some value based education, knowledge, affection towards the environmental conservation, and all people collectively, they must participate in this, and there should be a public movement that should be run to protect the environment. Many developing countries, many undeveloped countries, and the developed countries also, they have designated a plan to protect the environment, or to run the environmental conservation. That is important, and we also must participate in this movement. That is the gist of the story. Now, next, let us study about the environmental conservation, that is our social responsibility. We know that when there is a movement or any huge work is there, only one person cannot do it. It's a collective responsibility and our social responsibility to perform it. Why this occurs? The background is that the man proved its superiority over the nature, and he established he established a domination over the nature, and so he disturbed all the nature for a better life or the prosperous life. So in or another way, the man has disturbed the balance of nature, and so it's our responsibility to maintain it, to gain again to gain the balance in it. So man has to play a crucial role in this environmental balance, that is the collective responsibility. We must practice it. Then how this can occur? Hmm. You are given an example, very great example of a big story of small man under this title. It is about Jadhav Mulai Payam, and you have to go through this information, and you will come to know that how a small man can change the environment on his own, in spite of all problems and hindrances, disturbances occur. Only the determination of a person, how can it change? You have already learned about the Chipko movement, which was run by the Bishnoi ladies. So, if you have determination, if you have affection, then you can change the whole scenario. Next important thing, that each and every person must act upon these laws. But if it doesn't happen, then there must be some legislation. And so you are given about the laws of conservation of environment, and you go through it. That is not much difficult. You can just read and remember all that. We shall jump to the next point, that is environmental conservation and the biodiversity. We learned that how the environmental conservation is done, what is the need of that, and it is the social responsibility. Now, environmental conservation as the biodiversity. The biodiversity, that is the richness of living organisms and various species that are important to run a healthy and happy life. So we need to conserve all these species, all these biodiversities for the richness of our life. So first understand there are three types of environmental conservation and the diversities. First, that is the genetic diversity. Next is the species diversity, and the third is the ecosystem diversity. Let us learn about it. First, very first, that is the genetic diversity. First, understand that genetic diversity is the diversity between the organisms of the same species. Same species means suppose man is there, but every man is different from the other man. So there is a diversity between the same species, organisms of same species. Next important, that is there is every possibility of wiping out the species if the diversity goes on decreasing, then and within the organisms of the members who are involved in the sexual reproduction. So if the diversity that decreases, then there is possibility of wiping out the of the particular species. Next important, that is the species diversity. We know that there are innumerable species of plants and animals. We look around, if you consider a particular type of plant, then you understand that there are so many species of the same plant. Then next important, that there are, as told, there are types of animals and microbes also. Suppose you consider bacteria, then there are several species of bacteria. There are several species of viruses. So not only plants and animals, but every living being has the species diversity, and due to that, there are innumerable species are available of each and every organism. The next important, that is the ecosystem diversity. Many ecosystems are available. We know, we considered in the in earlier period that there are so many ecosystems, and in a particular region, and each ecosystem has their members and their interactions between the plants, animals, and many other components. Next, it is important that all these ecosystems, they have the particular set of the characteristics having the particular plants and the animals. Now, there are again various types of ecosystem we can consider as in natural ecosystems and the artificial ecosystems. So that is the ecosystem diversity. Again, first, that is the genetic diversity, species diversity, and the ecosystem diversity. And these diversities are important. They are enriching the biodiversity ultimately, and thereby we must conserve all these diversities to protect our environment. Then next important, that how these ecosystems are maintained and how these this is carried out. We know from the ancient times we used to conserve the environments. You consider as the various types of forest were consumed, as we called as the Vanarai, Devarai, that is the sacred grove. Sacred grove means a particular forest that is conserved in the name of God, and so always we know that it has the social protection. It is not guarded by government, but it is protected by the community itself. And so it is called as the sacred grove. Sacred groves are nothing but a kind of sanctuaries. These sanctuaries, they were protected and considered to be very, very sacred one, holy one. And so they were protected by the community or the by the society. So this is all about the various steps to conserve the environment and various types of the diversities or the biodiversities. Students, let us understand how can the biodiversity be conserved. There are certain steps that we have to consider. Number one, that is protecting of rare species. We know certain organisms, maybe plants or maybe animals, that are not seen frequently. These species has become rare and we have to conserve them. This is the first step. They know that certain animals that we are going to discuss in about the various types of species diversities also. Next important, that is establishing the natural and the national parks and the sanctuaries. It is very important to establish the national parks and the sanctuaries. It's a government role, but we should use it properly. We know that certain gardens or parks, they are not used properly, and it is very important to maintain all this. Next important, that is the projects for conservation of species, the species that are important. We know that the Bengali tigers that we have to conserve. Then especially the projects such as the Gir sanctuary, which is in the Gujarat, that is specially meant for the tigers. So conserving all that plants and animals, that is important. Observing the rule. Uh, we know that these plants, a special branch of medicine that is we call as the homeopathy or the Ayurveda, which needs all these medicinal plants. Next important, that is observing the rules. If government has made some rules that we must obey, that we must follow and observe, it is our duty. Next important, that is maintaining the record of the traditional knowledge. We have got many uh, traditional things as we protect them as a culture. So if any kind of knowledge about the medicines or anything, that must be conserved, that must be protected, and there should be a systematic record to give it to the future generations. So these are very important steps by which we can conserve our biodiversity. Next important, that is you are given with the voluntary organizations and international environment organizations which are situated, and a long list is given. You can go through and get the information about those. So I'm not going to explain it. There is no question of explaining. It is factual information. Next important, that is your role in the conservation of environment. You are given with a chart, and very specifically you are asked to give your role. So go through that chart and find a suitable role that can be played to conserve that environment. It is up to you that how you take, whether you want to uh, do work in the conservation or preservation, if you want to get some innovative ideas about conservation. How can we conserve all these components of environment? That you have to choose one component and uh, frame your work in that connection. So that is the role of yourself, and I'm keeping you for as an homework. Now, next important that we have to study that the hotspots of biodiversity. There is a factual information given in India as well as the worldwide information. We can consider only 34 highly sensitive areas are there, out of which 15.7% of areas are there. Next of environment, Earth, total Earth, 86% areas are destroyed, 2.3% is left over with the sensitive spots, and out of which 1,50,000 plant species are there, and those are only 50% of the total count. Then 135 species of animals are noticed, and 1,500 plant species are found in the Western Ghats. Then out of total plant species in the entire world, only 50% are endemic. Endemic means the particular plants are found in the particular area. So this is all about the hotspots of biodiversity. Once again, here the role of you in conserving the environment that you have to go through, and several steps to conserve the biodiversity are already